Ghost in the machine, a veil over the eye. Race is a lie, a script for the managed, a reason to die. It's the dementia, the spirit, it's the glitch in the code. It's the heavy, heavy baggage on a sovereign road. Dissolve the construct, right? Yes, yeah. It started as a lie, a whisper in the dark, designed to keep the brothers from finding the spark. Father is a soul whose sovereign operating system was no longer whole. It didn't pull that trigger from his fully human place. The construct had the wheel, the construct ran the race. So stop fighting your father and dismantle the disease. If a lawyer wrote the code, the architect holds the keys. What was manufactured can be dismantled.
Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Trinity podcast. I'm the host, King, and joined by my co-host, Jess Esther, and my other co-host, Mike Murphy. How are you all doing today?
Fantastic.
And the great thing about what we're building on is to talk about how we've all gone through our wreckage. We call it wreckage to wisdom that comes after a thunderstorm, and it helps us emerge into being fully human. And so each of us are going to talk about different wreckage to wisdom stories we had in our lives, and more importantly, how they all led back to mountains of hope and the man Mike Murphy here, which helped me emerge into fully human as well. So one of the ways I want to get started, as we always get our shows started, is with our check-in, to show folks how important it is to really have and live at the state of gratitude. So with that being said, Jess, what's your gratitude and what's your spiritual energy number today, being 0, life sucks, to 10, being life is awesome? What would you say in the moment you currently are?
I'm vibrating at 10, which on my scale is the frequency of love.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I am grateful to be on this journey of becoming fully human, just dismantling and taking off the layers of every onion layer, every construct that I've created to limit myself and my potential. And as I uncover that, I'm grateful to continue discovering new aspects of myself, and also just inspired by the inspiration that is flowing through as I discover clearer alignment in my relations. And with that, I'm just grateful to be in this triad, having this conversation today.
Absolutely. I resonate with that. Mike, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a 10 also, and I'm very, very grateful for so many things. But I want to speak a little bit about being fully human. For me, that's not only the physical, it's the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And so we have to incorporate all 4 of those, because we're actually spiritual beings living in an animal body. And we have to figure out how to merge those, because there's the unseen world. Like, we have an unseen heart, which is the emotion and the love, but we have a physical heart. Same with every other aspect of ourselves. So that's being fully human to me.
I love that. I love that, Mike. And as we build on that, there's 4 agreements that we like to say that constitutes being fully human. One is that energy is everything, and everything is energy. Number 2 is that energy is in a constant state of motion, either it's an increase or a decrease. Number 3, we focus on the increase. Not that we can't be, we're imperfect, so we're going to create decrease, but our true north is the increase. And then number 4, our identity is fully human. And so to your point, it's the soul, the mind, and the heart that comprises us, and that which guides us, and that's what makes us fully human. And I'm grateful. I'm a 10. I match you all with that. I vibrate at love energy, and I live at the state of gratitude. And as I lay into why I'm in the state of gratitude, and I've been at the state of gratitude ever since I left Mountains of Hope. And that's where I experienced this emergence of gratitude being there. I feel it was a spiritual vortex. And then on top of going through the ceremonies we went through, Jess, you and I experienced, and the intentionality in which Mike was able to create the Mountains of Hope Sanctuary, it helped me emerge and put me on the track to become fully human. And see myself as that for the first time in my life, not my race, not my gender, not my career, not my trauma, but as fully human who's open to emerging and growing on a daily basis. We don't have everything figured out right now. It's the journey of becoming fully human. And with that being said, Mike, I think you have one of the most profound stories that I've heard. And I just kind of wanted, if you wouldn't mind starting with your wreckage to wisdom that you feel most compelled to share right now.
Well, there's many. So, I would think I'll start with probably the most powerful, and that was when I fell in love with a woman named Margot, and we got married, and then first we were just dating, and then 9 months into that, I found a golf ball or a ping pong ball sized tumor in her breast, hard as a golf ball, and she had stage 3 breast cancer, and so we dealt with that for a few 4 or 5 years. Got married, and then she wanted to have a child, and so we are going to do in vitro fertilization. And he said, "Hey, you need to. I'm going to flood you with hormones. So you need to go to your oncologist, get his blessing." That's when he found a tumor in her clavicle, so it's metastasized everywhere. And so, we fought that for a few years, and then on December 1st, she was told that if she did nothing, she had 6 weeks to live, and if she treated it, she had 6 months to live. And so that experience, I'm so grateful that she fought every day for another day of life, brain surgeries, having her lungs drained, 2 months of total constipation, just a lot of pain and suffering. But every night, she prepared, along with me, to take that last breath. And so much healing took place. And, there's cures and then there's healing. And to heal becomes fully, as we're talking about right now, becoming fully human. And when we took that last breath, so much peace, so much love. She'd resolved everything, and it total peace. And then when her spirit left her body, it was a beautiful experience for her, but devastating for me. She told me hundreds of times, "Mike, you need to learn to be vulnerable." I didn't have a clue what she was talking about until the day she died. And then I was totally vulnerable. And I used to say back then, this was 2011, that God was finally able to come in and fillet open my heart and remove any arrogance, BS, self-centeredness, and replace it with love. And so that became a transformation, which led to the Love from Margot Foundation, and then eventually Mountains of Hope. In the meantime, I published a few books about my stories. And so my life today is about love and compassionate service to people that are suffering. And there's a lot of those people in the world right now. So, I think that's the greatest fulfillment in my life right now, in my heart.
Excellent. Excellent. As you share that story, and I want to give Jess credit for this as well, I had never really experienced anyone in my life. I had been blessed, I would say, with cancer. So I never really had to, it was always on the outskirts of my immediate circle, not my inner circle. And so coming to Mountains of Hope for me was a challenge, just to be around folks who were dealing with that and healing from that expression and dealing with that experience. And I wasn't sure how I was going to handle that. How's that going to be, or how they're going to treat me, how am I going to be received? And I was welcome. I felt like I was part of the family. It's a family feeling environment there. Because again, I believe you set it up for healing. And that's exactly how I felt, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with folks from around the world. And here we are sitting and looking at ourselves as human beings in the healing. And everybody was open, everybody was vulnerable. And Mike, I don't know if you ever know this, but I share this story with you quickly. Todd and Pam were there. And when I first came to Mountains of Hope, I was dealing with my own issues. And I couldn't sleep well the first 3 or 4 nights. I would go to bed at 8 o'clock and wake up at 2 in the morning and be up the entire night. And I shared it one day while we was having breakfast. And Todd hadn't said much to me the entire time. And Todd heard that, and he said, he got up and he kind of staggered back to his room, and he came back and he handed me a little vial. And it was a THC vial. And he was saying, "Here, try this." And I'm saying to myself, for folks who don't know, Todd had cancer at this stage. And so here this cancer patient is sharing with me his medicine that helps him deal with the pain. And he's sharing it with me, a complete stranger, just out of the fact that I'm telling him I'm having trouble sleeping. So of course I try to turn it down, saying, "No, I don't want to take your medicine." He said, "No, I got plenty of it. Just use as much as you need to get your sleep." And that really moves me. And I'm saying to myself, now Todd lived in Illinois, southern on a farm. Him and Pam lives on a farm in Illinois. And for most people, typically in America, it's so divided right now. When you say those kind of geographical locations, that it instantly means MAGA. that part of the MAGA movement. I never felt any of that when I was there. We never talked any of that. Those labels that we are so conditioned to being here in America, hearing every single day. Our political parties, our spiritual, religious interests, all went away, and everybody was just fully human in Mountains of Hope. And that to me was just impactful and powerful. And then getting a chance to meet Jess, who I felt was kind of the anchor of keeping everybody vibrating in a emergence rhythm, making sure we were breathing right, we were journaling correctly, and we were in tune to our spiritual selves. And then listen to Jess's journey now. Jess, if you wouldn't mind sharing your journey as far as, you know, how you got on the path, your wreckage to becoming fully human. I think you've gone through several different identity changes. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, I have. Similar to Mike, I was initiated into this journey through an experience of death of a loved one. And that experience changed my awareness because I did notice the healing and how much came into completion toward the end and how much freedom there was in returning to love. And it inspired me to understand that that can happen with or without leaving your body, and that there's an opportunity for all of us to release the suffering and step more into love if we choose. And for myself, it was a journey that started early in my life. When I look at the wreckage, I was born into a wreckage. My parents were fighting, and my mother got labeled crazy and sent away to a hospital. And being that crazy woman and being the one sent to the hospital was my greatest fear. So the day that happened for me was my deepest wreckage, but I was headed down a road of my own doom, my own death, if I didn't choose to go into that crisis. But identifying that I was in a crisis, that I was in a mental health crisis due to stress, had me understand that that's just part of being human, and crisis happens to all of us at some point or another. And suddenly it was my turn. And as I looked around, I noticed the loving eyes of people around me. And we had resonance. We were related to each other in our suffering. And it took me back to that space of death that had happened the same year, just before that. And I noticed that part of my mother's pattern and my pattern was holding grief for the family and not processing it. And I was now dealing with a symptom of complex stress and grief. And it became my purpose and my mission at that point to be of service and to finally step fully into the work of crisis. And to say, if someone's in crisis, I'll be there, because nobody needs to do that alone. So I've done that over and over, and that's what brought me to Mountains of Hope. I had a friend who was in a medical crisis, and she chose Mountains of Hope. She connected with Mike. And the opportunity to be there and to be of service in that way, where people are in crisis, they're in a medical crisis, and they just need that peer-to-peer support. That one human that comes and knocks on the door and brings in a meal and says, you're just human and you're going through your human storm. And just normalize that there are storms. There are some storms that completely end our life, and there are some storms that just completely transform us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, you know, I just want to add this too, Mike, that one of the things, and you built this, and now, if you wouldn't mind talking about it a little bit, you have a labyrinth that you build at Mountains of Hope. And as you all know, it's part of the ritual or tradition is that everybody who stays there walks the labyrinth. And the labyrinth you build is a very, folks will know is a, Mike, you could talk more about it. I don't want to misquote it or mistalk about it, other than the fact that I want to mention that. So here it is, my second day there. I'm still trying to figure out where I am in this new country and all these things and this new environment. And it's just like, well, you got to walk around the labyrinth. And the way you walk around the labyrinth is to get yourself prepared for it. And you can't step over the stones. You got to walk within the path. And what really touched me the most was that I hadn't even had a conversation with Pam yet, but she walked the path with me, as well as Jess, as well as Angie. And Angie was another woman that was over there dealing with cancer. And so these two women who did not know me at all, who had every reason to be only concerned about themselves and their journey and why they're there, decided to walk a labyrinth with me that takes about anywhere from 15 minutes minimum to 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the person's own journey and how much time they want to take, because there's no rush. You walk it, you get to the end, you say your intention, and Mike, you definitely and Jess can describe it better for everyone else. But my point is, walking back was another 15 to 20 minutes, and you're doing it slowly. And there's no stepping on anyone's feet. It's just intentionality and thoughts and quiet the entire journey. And for those two women to do that with me without knowing me really set the tone for me and the kind of the environment what I was going to be experiencing for the rest of the time I was there.
You did. You slowed way down after that. I'm curious, Mike, how you decided to, like, your intention behind placing the labyrinth there.
Well, I would say almost all Mountains of Hope was inspired from beyond me and then developed through me. And so that particular labyrinth is rather unique. It's a template of a labyrinth in Paris, little outside Paris, France. It's the Chartres Cathedral, and it was built in the century 1200. And people have been walking it ever since. And it's inside and on cement, right? And so I was looking for something similar like that, and I found that. And it just appealed to me, right? And I don't know if you guys went to the very top of the property and looked down. It was very beautiful, the tree of life in the middle and all that. And so I'll never forget the day. I mean, I had some people coming way back in 2017, long before what we are today. So I went out there. I didn't have a lot of support back then, and I pulled a shovel out and started digging it to get rid of the grass and to create it. And after about an hour and that, I said, okay, let's hire someone, because it was quite a big task. And so the beauty of that is, one, I've written a walking meditation for that. I just haven't recorded it and published yet. But my intention is that as you're walking, see, I really believe that we're messed up because of childhood programming, which comes from, for most of us, dysfunctional parents, one or both, and then the media and our siblings and the world. And so our subconscious is programmed, and there it is. And so our subconscious is programmed, but we're not aware of that. For example, like people used to say to me, you're just like your father. I say, you're nuts, because we have a blind spot when it comes out. We can't see that, right? And so to become fully human and healthy and whole, we need to examine that programming and install our programming, because they programmed this for what they wanted, okay, and their behaviors. And so my intention is, in this meditation that I've written, as you're walking into the center of it, it's like an onion. You're peeling away all that programming and you're letting it all go. And when you get to the very center, you're empty. And when you're empty, you're whole and complete. Mm-hmm. Now, as you walk out, you install your programming, what you want for your life, what's going to fulfill you, and what's your purpose, and what are you here to learn. And so when you exit, you've gotten rid of a lot of your childhood programming and perhaps other programming through relationships as an adult. Most are painful, or a lot of that sticks is those painful memories. Mm-hmm. And you let all that go, and you get there and you're totally empty and clear and free. And as you walk out, and that's why the creation frequency plays a role in this, because we teach people to write 6 powerful intentions as if they already exist, because there's no difference between imagination and reality. And as you're walking out, you read your intentions, or you memorize your intentions, or you think about your intentions, and you walk out. And I love this quote. I attribute it to Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if he's the originator, but he basically says, if you want to change your personal reality, you need to change your personality. And what does that mean? What's your personality? It's what you think, how you act, what you do. And so as you're going in there, you're letting all that go, And so you go in person A and you get this center empty and you come out person Z, completely different personality. And then you can create a different personal reality, whether it's around healing or success or being a better parent or child or whatever, you know? So that's the intention of that for me.
Yeah. And it's certainly effective.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember a ritual even before the labyrinth of them, well, even before that, you holding a class and teaching about the balancing of the field of
Mhm.
energy,
Mhm.
and then putting that into the intention, then taking that intention out and publicly stating it so that you can be witnessed in your intention, and then carrying that intention through, pulling it out, and then placing it into the ground
Yes.
and placing a rock over it and writing your name and your date to completely solidify the somatic experience of it.
Yeah. I love that ceremony and the people leaving their intentions there. So if they ever return, they can look them up and say, oh, wow, you know, look at the growth I've experienced in the last 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, it's so incredible that what I really felt was everybody's sincere seriousness about it. Like no one took it lightly.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to seeing that intentionality in that intentionality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, because most people don't take things seriously that they're involved in. You know,
Yeah.
like for example, they go to, I'm not picking on anybody particularly, but if you go to church and you'll see people saying, well, you don't supposed to chew gum in church, and there's somebody chewing gum in church. Don't wear a hat, and then you're wearing a hat. But Jess, you want to?
Yeah, it's such a different circumstance when people are in crisis.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about Pam, who stayed with you the whole time. Well, Pam had done manifestation work the night before and witnessed Todd go into Meta and ask for a rope.
Mhm.
And he received the rope on the way out the labyrinth.
Oh, wow.
He came out and said, I'm like, he was holding it. So there's this connection that happens in weaving all of the teaching with the experience.
Yeah. And I'll credit you, Jess, and I think Carolina, I don't know, you know, it was what we did with the first 30 guests is they would plant a tree. Okay. And then pretty soon I realized, hey, we're going to have a forest where we don't need one. Right. So, but I wanted everybody to leave something there at Mountains Hope, something of them. Right. And so then I switched to this, where they would put the rock and write their name and their date and bury their intention under. But it was you guys that really made it that effective and serious for our guests, right? And so I'm grateful for that. And now we do plant a memorial. We have a memorial park. It's not finished. Mm-hmm. By the way, looking at this picture really motivates me to get back there. So I'll be there June 23rd, and I'm looking forward to that. But so now we'll have just a memorial park. And as far as I know, out of 80 seriously ill patients in 2025, only 4 have passed. And 40 of those were serious cancer patients. So now we will have trees for those folks and then stones for those other visitors.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to say it's really important that there are spaces like this when people are going through that critical change.
Yeah.
Because like you said, King, it's not like going to church and asking you not to chew gum, you know, like this is your life on the line. Like, and the reason that it's important to find that rope is that's your lifeline. And there's no other thing. Like it's so significant.
And to that point, and I've tested this in conversations I've had with people as a connector, and my business is building connections and networks. I would ask people, what is your intent? And so many people are thrown off by that question, right? They don't have an answer for it. And I can see where it's like a paradigm interruption in their normal thinking, because they're prepared to tell me about their 30-second elevator speech. They're scripted with that. But your intent is a whole different energy and thinking, and that intentionality there amounts to hope, which is real. And it was like, for me, I've been preparing myself for my intent. So I knew it. He was like, take some time to write it. I'm like, I know what my intention is, right? But I felt the energy around the art of doing it and the necessity of doing it. And then how everybody took it so serious. There was no, how long is this going to take? Is he really going to, walk this slow? It was none of that. It was just allowed me to really be in my place. As Mike said, walk it, heal, release, reprogram my mind. And Mike, here's what's interesting. And I had shared this with you. So I came back from Mountains of Hope and I really began to think about creating this, what I call a 180-day journey. And it was about reprogramming my mind, because I started really watching a lot of YouTube videos of Neville Goddard and Alan Watts. And they were talking about the importance of owning your mind. Mm-hmm. And I thought about the fact the construct controls your mind every single day. Like when I wake up, the first thing that I used to do was have the news wake me up. And then it's instant black man shot in the city, police violence here, war over there. It's like, that's the first thing I'm putting into my mind the minute I wake up is that. How can I expect to have a great day? And then I don't go through my gratitude list. And I get out in traffic. I start interacting with everybody. That's going to lead to a day where I'm hoping things be better. I mean, hoping things don't get worse, but wishing for things to be better. I call it the hope and wish factor. And I wanted to change that thinking and say, I'm going to intentionally program my mind, myself, with my own thoughts. And then I had read your book, Creation Frequency, and you had talked about that, but I forgot those details. But those were the seeds that get planted. I talk about, you get seeds planted in your mind as you continue to go through life. And it's the thunderstorms. And just like in nature, when a thunderstorm happens, nitrogen fills the air, creates carbon dioxide and oxygen, and that filters through the soil to get those seeds that's there to be nurtured and start to grow. And that's what happened to me as well. That seed nurtured, that thunderstorm I went through nurtured those seeds, and I started receiving information differently than I had when I first read it. It's now I'm saying I see the logic in protecting my mind the first 30 minutes of my day, and then protecting my mind the last 30 minutes of my night before I go to bed. And I just kind of want you to talk about why that's important and why people need to understand that as well.
Well, listen, just like you, I used to start my day that way as well. Okay. And you couldn't start it in a worse way. Most people pick up their phone right away, right? So now I start my day with three prayers. One is the Our Father, and one is the third step prayer from the program Alcoholics Anonymous, and the Serenity Prayer. And then my journaling, I've talked about before is, I start with gratitude, wisdom, and love. I ask for wisdom and I just put this down, right? And you brought up Neville Goddard, and I want to share a person that had a great influence in me in my early stages of this. And his name is Joseph Murphy, no relationship. And he wrote a book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And that had such an amazing, of course, meeting Doug Fitzgerald and learning what I learned from him, which I now call the creation frequency, was extremely powerful. But you need more support, okay? You can't have, the more you can support a belief with other reference points, the more it gets ingrained. And it's now not a belief, it's a knowing based on experience, right? And so all this stuff, the beauty of the world today, it's all there for free on YouTube, And so he's a powerful, powerful teacher. And yeah, it's so important to start that day, For me, it's prayer and journaling gratitude and ask for wisdom in certain areas and in love. And life, now you're vibrating a much higher frequency, and now you're starting to attract, things that serve you instead of all that negativity. You start your day with all that, you're just going to attract more negativity. And that's all we are is everything is energy, as you said in the beginning of the show. And Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, it's energy, vibration, and frequency. And that's what's going on. We have 50 trillion cells. I promise you, they're all vibrating at a certain frequency based on what we're doing internally with a lot of different factors. And our mitochondria just drives this thing. And then if you look at a star closely, they're all vibrating. Everything is energy vibrating. And what amazes me today is, people are still skeptical of all this, right? So I'll do a log into Wells Fargo example, and they have this 2-factor authorization. I think it's 1/100th of a second. When I hit send, there's my code. It's so quick now, right? And I can literally text someone in China and get a response in less than a second. So there is a field of energy right here, which Tesla said was free energy, which obviously we're not using, but we should be. But it's here, and we operate in the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And we'll operate in 1% of that, and that's the frequency of light. Okay, our cells communicate via light. That's why I don't wear sunglasses, because I want this light to come into my eyes and feed my cells and my melanin and all of that, right? So it's so important, and that's why I ground the Mother Earth, because we're made of atoms. And when I watch the sun rise, it's just the most amazing experience, because I literally see the positive photons from the sun coming right into my, especially if I can get there before it breaks the horizon. And it's just, it's a 10, 15-minute amazing experience. Yes. I'm standing barefoot on the ground and picking up trillions of negative electrons. So atoms are made of all this, right? So I'm balancing my system as far as and atoms are 99.999% space. Again, saying that everything is energy. All this data and all this Wi-Fi is going right through us, right? And so it's just interesting, but we become so closed-minded and so brainwashed, which comes out of that TV, which when I was growing up was probably 90% truth and 10% propaganda. And today I always say it's almost 90% propaganda. I mean, right. You take one story, you can literally find 20 different narratives for the same story, because everybody has an agenda. And it's all about mind control and getting us to do what they want us to do, whoever they are, right? So I say, listen, we need to get grounded to Mother Earth. We need to live from our heart, which is our true essence. In their head, you're dead. And so the beautiful thing about Mount Hope is I really try to nudge people gently out of their head, back into their heart. And I believe, surrounded by this beautiful nature, by the love of our staff. I mean, forget all the stuff, the other stuff we do. We really detox the body. We grow 120 fruits and vegetables. But I believe the real healing takes place when they can access this. And because I believe there's a spark of the Creator in each one of us, and we can access that, no matter whether you're cured or not, you're healed. And you speak about Rachel, right? I mean, she's not fully healed, but she's not dead, and she's living from here, and now she's doing beautiful things in the world. So, I mean, this is just a temporary journey. No, everybody's going to leave their body into the unseen world. And so I say, why not prepare for it now?
Yeah. Beautiful.
One thing I want to add, Jess, real quick, is this. As Mike talks about grounding and taking his shoes off. And I remember I first met you, and my initial negative, I shouldn't say narcissistic, but my
it's okay to say it.
My ego was telling me, who is this woman to tell me about being spiritual? I don't know about being spiritual. I'm a former president of DC chapter of Conscious Capitalism. I've been in so many spiritual retreats and books, and now she's going to tell me how to be spiritual. But what countered those thoughts that just pop in your head was your authenticity, your sincerity. You meant what you said. You had this peaceful presence about you. And I'm just really curious, because you was also about making sure that, and that's why you and I collaborated around my 180-day journey to create the journey to become fully human over 180 days of human emergence, because you brought to what I had, which is frameworks and logic, you brought love, energy to that, and journaling and being intentional and grounding. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really what I feel has been helpful in my life and bringing me that balance.
Yeah, thank you. A memory came in as you were describing that, because I remember feeling that judgment. It was there was a morning after we did a yoga class. So we were coming out of a spiritual space, and we had just been in an embodied practice, and we met at the front door, and you said something like, so what's next? Like, you're ready for, like, I'm handling the agenda for the day. I know what's next, of course, but I said, take your shoes off. And you're like, why? And I said, well, the sun's coming up. Like, let's just stand on the ground. And we stood in the grass, and you were, I just remember the shift, because it's like, that's what's up. Like, that's what we're actually doing here. And it's interesting that it takes being in a crisis or taking a break or actually intentionally saying, I'm going to detox, to notice that that's what there is to do. And it's so simple, and yet it's so profound that it's when we're actually in the crisis, we decide that it's that important. Like, I talked a little bit earlier about going into a treatment facility. And in that moment, it was like my life depended on it. And at the moment where Todd was coming out of the labyrinth and he got the rope, it was because his life depended on it. And when we talk about this morning prayer and connecting, the intention can be that strong that my life depends on it. And stepping into this fully human journey has been that for me. It's like, there's no other option. No other identity is going to fit. So it's like, well, then what does that look like? Well, every morning you're going to put your feet on the ground. And just really be fully human and not in the mind of what's the schedule yet. Like, we'll get to the schedule, I promise. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But the part that I'm committed to is that connection, is regulating the energetic field through the biogenetics of the body.
And one of the things I want to add to our show as a regular ritual, and this is something that Mike suggested. Now, Mike, I want you to kind of walk us through this. And I don't know if you're prepared for this or not, but you had mentioned this 5 minute of either love or prayer of intention. And I just really want to take a moment right now in the middle of our show to do that, so that we can begin to start creating the energy and the intentionality. So I think it's important. So why don't you lead us up to what that is and then walk us through this practice?
Yeah, thank you for that. It originated actually when my late wife was given 6 months to live, and I created a website called Send Margot Love. And I asked people to just take 5 minutes. They'd sign up like from 2 p.m. to 2:05 p.m. and ask them to just pray for her for 5 minutes a day. And what was interesting, and I hope when we develop this, we could have something similar, but we had a map of the entire world. And you'd see people all over the world, because there'd be a little red dot, okay, who had signed up to do this. And so my concept now is that, and I don't want to be negative here, but my opinion is that the way humanity is heading, I think we're in for some darker days and some difficult times. And I think that, is obvious to a lot of people, right? And so, and there's not much we can do about it, because we don't have much power anymore. Everybody thinks because they got a gun, no. I mean, we're helpless. And when it comes to if the powers to be want to pull the plug on this and do certain things, COVID being a prime example. And so my concept is this: if we want to change the consciousness in this thing called this world, Earth, the concept is that people would sign up for 5 minutes again. But this time, originally I was going to call it Pray for Humanity, but it's not really a prayer. So now I'm thinking Heart for Humanity, but we'll figure that out later. And then just say, okay, for those 5 minutes, I'm going to sit quietly, ideally in the sun, ideally grounded to earth, but this doesn't matter that much. But with our hands over our heart, we close our eyes and we see in our mind's eye the world we want to live in, and not one chasing fame and fortune, but one of unity, integrity, responsibility, community, compassion, and love. We see it in our mind's eye, and we feel it in our heart and our body, and we start to vibrate at that frequency. So just imagine if we could get, millions of people doing this, because in my belief system that, I can control my individual consciousness to a certain degree, not totally, but there's the collective consciousness. And that field we're all affected by, we're just not aware of that until you become very, very sensitive, and then you pick it up. There's many studies on 9/11, how, they were studying, the emotional situation here. And I don't know how they do that, it's via some satellite or something. And it was very, very obvious that there was great emotional distress on that day. And so I say, let's put a positive field out there of intention of what I'm describing here. And I think it would have a great effect. And if nothing else, I promise you, it will have a great effect on you personally. and the bigger you become, the best version of yourself, you're going to affect all the people immediately around you, family, friends, coworkers, etc. Right? So, I mean, I'm hoping that, King, you can pull it off, and I can support you.
Well, I believe so, Mike. Because see, it's funny how I call these things universal mile markers, that you can see signs, and to your point, energy is everything. I believe that there's frequencies out there right now, and the only reason we don't pick them up is our pineal gland is calcified based on the construct's programming. And so the more we begin to reprogram our minds and get that clarity and get that grounding, the higher our vibrational frequency raised, and we can start picking up on that energy from the ancestors' wisdom that's there. And for me, what's important in doing that is that it's helped me see the world in a much clearer place. Like I no longer, and this is a man who spent 30 years believing that my identity was Black, and that was my purpose in life, was to raise up the Black community. That drove me every single day. And again, it wasn't about being anti anybody. It was just about being proud of who I was and wanting to see my community prosper instead of always being in the position of needing, lacking, and always a victim. And so that drove me until I went through my storm. And my storm cracked me wide open. I had to change my identity. And that's where I came to Mountains of Hope, and it helped me with that process. And see, I believe that in this world, the construct has taught us what's value. And value is money. And then everybody chases money. But then you look at, and that's why I tell folks, the critical thinking, if you look at the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, how many people want his life? No one wants his life. They want his money, but you don't want his life. And that's the duality, right? And you don't want his life because he's no one to mirror yourself after. He doesn't show you an example of someone who is giving, emotionally intelligent, loving, fights for justice for others. He doesn't give that impression at all. And these are the men that's creating technology, AI, and all these systems. Men who think and function at that money is the root of all evil. I mean, money is the goal that we must put our intentionality towards. And it, to me, it robs your soul. Mm-hmm. And that's to me, Mike, is what really, I would say, connects me to you and makes me really want to co-create with you, is because even though you might fit that demographic from a skin suit context, right? White male, rich. And so people will say, well, the rich are evil, the rich are wrong. No, you can still be fully human in that place. Yeah. And you've shown that. And you've shown that to me in my stay over there. And I just wanted to say this quickly, like, Mountains of Hope is definitely, Jess, Rachel, and I do a show called The Art of Othering, based on Rachel's name. I never felt othered there. Like Rachel, Jess, and Mike and I had this conversation. I had no idea you were gay until like the last day I was there, and you mentioned the fact you had a wife, right? You didn't wear that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being gay at all. But what I'm saying is you didn't come with that identity to lead with that as I'm a gay woman, right? Yeah. And so no one else was leading with their race, identity, gender, religion, any of that. It was, we're human beings, and everybody was caring about the other person. Someone was there at breakfast. Where's Todd? How's he doing this morning? You know, and this is 3 days. This is not, 4 months. This is 3 days. People are having that kind of emotional intelligence and caring about other people. And so I just kind of wanted to give Jess an opportunity to say, Jess, what do you feel is what was the most significant things you healed while you were at Mountains of Hope, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean, you're really talking about the reality of when we're all in crisis, we're all going through a storm, we're in transformation, and our life is on the line. We don't lead with our identity in those situations. Like, we lead with our hearts, because we know that that's what we're there to do, is to heal. So we're all connecting with each other and asking how we're doing and how did we sleep and does this feel good and does that feel right and is there anything I can do to support you, and uplifting each other and giving each other signs of life. It's like a whole different mode of operation. And being in that field, like, it creates deep presence, it creates deep resonance, and things that are of the construct tend to just fall away. For myself, I experienced a detox, and I was going through a deep transformation in my relationship because of that identity that I had taken on. It was creating a lot of friction and conflict in my inner world. And I didn't know it at the time, even though I wasn't leading with that identity. It was something that fell away after returning home. And I just naturally said that I no longer want to fit in those boxes. I don't want to identify as a label. It no longer fits. It doesn't resonate. And it's because it was more organic, more connected, more natural, more loving to meet at the heart. And so, King, like, you experienced that, and I also experienced that. And that's from that deep intention that Mike created there, that we were there for healing.
Yeah.
We were there for healing. And Mike, here's something else that I think that I want to make sure that doesn't get neglected and give you an opportunity to talk about this, is that your business acumen. Again, I've met a lot of successful businessmen in my life, and being a part of the DC chapter of Conscious Capitalism, or the Conscious Capitalism world, I've met John Mackey and other successful business leaders from around the world. A gentleman who owns Tom's, the gentleman owns Whole Foods and Wegmans, and all these stores that claim or proclaim to have a higher purpose behind what they do. But you were able to take your desire and go to another country and build a sanctuary, and not only build a sanctuary, create the intentionality of healing, but then more importantly, hire folks from within that community. So now you're giving to that local population as well. And every single day I interact with your staff, from the time the first person picked me up in the airport with the sign that said King to let me know he was my driver, to every morning I would wake up, they'd greet me with a smile. Here's your smoothie, Mr. King. Would you like your smoothie? And here's your schedule for the day, you know. And then I go meet with doctors, and everybody was happy to see me. No one was just going through a checklist, getting me done. Everybody spent time, listened. I felt seen, I felt heard, and I felt, and you notice, I didn't want to leave. I went there, 7 days, and it was like, what can I do to stay longer? Because I had never experienced that kind of overwhelming amount of energy and love and intentionality.
Well, and I'd love to just comment on that, because I know Mike and I had a conversation when I first came, and he shared with me how the staff start their day, and that it's important for them to be serving from a full cup, not from a place of lack, and that's part of the intention of being there. And that he also invited me into that if I'm there to be emotional support and a peer partner for people, I can't be bringing my own lack to the game. And I knew that there were days where I was like, I'm depleted today. I'm not my full self. So I'm taking a break. And it was fully accepted and encouraged. Like, thank you for not bringing your lack to our patients. And then being able to trust that when I am there, I'm there to fully serve. And I've already served myself. So I'm serving from abundance. Who teaches staff to do that?
Yeah, for sure. And ironically, that's how I ran my car dealerships for 30 years. And so I think that's why I had a good measure of success. Because for me, I would tell them every month we'd have a constant, never-ending improvement employee of the month luncheon, and go over many things and honor successes and introduce new people. And for me, I would tell them every time, and I do the same thing in Mountains of Hope, listen, no one here is better than anyone else. I say, the guy washing the cars, to the office manager, the general manager, to me, we're all part of this wheel. And if one of those cogs isn't working properly, the whole thing suffers. And same thing with Mountains of Hope. So for me, it's about building a team that cares and you can trust. And more importantly, I try to inspire them to have pride in what they're doing. Most people don't like their jobs. I was just reading about all the Amazon workers. So it's like their warehouse, like 150% turnover every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in installing pride, paying as much as I can and above the market, and more importantly, involving them in our success. And you mentioned earlier, like I've known Jess over a year now. I didn't even know she was gay till you mentioned it the other day, because listen, and listen, we're all programmed to judge, right? You see person heavy, overweight, you see a different race, you see gay, you see what Muslim, you see a Hindu with the towel on their head. And so the brain wants to judge based on our programming. So I'm trying to train myself to only see heart and soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I get those judgments, heart and soul, because the truth is, in our essence, that's what we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned the pineal gland as well. So I mentioned to you guys, I don't know if it was on air or off last week, that I'm excited about really strong possibility of partnering with a guy named Josh Mason, who owns the Detox Stews. In fact, we'll both be there down there June 25th to work everything out. And I'm very, very hopeful that this is going to come together. Well, Josh has been coaching people on physical detox for over 11 years. When I first met him like 11 years ago, and he had an amazing suffering journey. You call about wreckage, creating wisdom. I mean, his was profound suffering for 3 years of physical illness. And he searched all over the world and spent over $1 million to fix it. And now that he does, he coaches very, very big name people, and he's profound at that, right? So I talking to him the other day or texting, whatever, and I say, hey man, I'm having this issue with my prostate, and can you have any ideas for me on how to shrink it? And believe me, almost every man has this thing. And so he goes, well, have you thought of coffee enemas? And I think the other thing was, I forget, sodium dioxide or something. I don't want to misquote that. And so, yeah, I'm very familiar with that, but I haven't done it for that purpose. So I'll explore that. And he says, okay, write everything down, send it to me. I'll give it to one of our coaches and we'll figure out a plan with you. And then he also said, you need to see this person in Berkeley that works for an organization or exposed to an organization called Clare Vision, C-L-A-R-E, Vision. And this was created a long time ago by either European or Australian, but he had a school in Australia for many, many years. And it's a very, very unique type of meditation. So I call this poor lady, hey, Josh told me to call you about my prostate. She goes, well, I do meditation. And so imagine that. So then I go and meet with her yesterday, just a beautiful woman. And coincidentally or ironically, her husband is suffering very, very severe cancer diagnosis, and it's a very, very difficult time right now. And so anyways, she taught me this process, and what makes it unique as opposed to this guy, I think his name was Sanger, he was in India trying to meditate, he just couldn't figure it out, right? And so at some point he created the ability to, in my case yesterday, she would touch my heart while I'm laying down and trying to activate the pineal gland through my breath and the vibration in the larynx, and then into the heart and into the pineal gland. And I would say my session was 45 minutes or so. And it was the most profound experience that I've ever had in regards to accessing the pineal gland and the heart. And so I strongly recommend anybody that's ready for this. Many people say, hey, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So this isn't for everybody. But for me, it was a very profound experience. Why? Because it was the most relaxed I've probably ever been in my whole life. I used to do a lot of Bikram yoga, which after that you're totally relaxed. But this was a different thing because I started to see things. I started to remember things, and it was so profound that I'm really looking forward to expanding on this process that I just learned yesterday.
Wow. Perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And you made me think about this. And that's why the theme song Race is Alive, to talk about the fact that race was first mentioned in the United States in written history in 1675 after a rebellion led by a gentleman by the name of Beacon, who was a minister, led a group of enslaved Africans, free slaves, as well as Irish and other immigrants against the system, and they won. And the system's response to that was, we can never let that happen again, so we got to divide people along racial lines and those things like that. And that's the first time race started being mentioned as a way of categorizing people. And so
Mm.
when people think about race or any of these other constructs, they believe it so hardly, like it's real. And it's like, no, we truly are energy in this skin suit. And I'm not making it up, it's physics. You know, people debate me as though it's my belief that race is a lie. It's like, no, it's a fact, and it's physics.
Yeah.
So much so that when you let that go, I believe, and I've experienced a 50% increase in energy and creativity, because I'm not leading in because when you believe in the way I was raised in my cultural conditioning, that when you are Black, you're told that that's who you are. You have to be 2 times better than every person white. And so for the rest of your life, every time you enter a meeting or a conversation, that fact that you're Black is there.
Mhm.
And the white person or in a skin suit is guilty of racism until they prove that they're not. Then you can relax and say, okay. Then you still can never really be your full self. You always have to be on guard. And that mental gymnastics you're doing is draining your energy. It's draining your creativity. And if you can let that go and just focus on I'm a human being and I'm co-creating with other human beings, now you're tapping into their energy. And I've been able to produce what I call frequency signals, which are songs that been dormant in me because I wanted to be a musician, but the way the construct teaches you, if you don't learn a musical instrument, then you're not a musician. If you can't carry a tune, then don't even try anymore. So you get used to just tabling those desires and just staying in your lane. And what I'm saying is that once you experience healing, true healing, and change your identity from anything that you could consider to be coloring your eyes, your perspective on life. Like I ask people this question as I begin to close my thoughts. When someone in the first 30 seconds of introduction leads with their race, their religion, their trauma, their country, their career, or their sexual orientation in that 30-second introduction without being asked, I challenge folks, this is what you should say to them. Okay, great. So now what do you want me to do with that? And I guarantee they don't have an answer because they've been scripted to say that. But if you challenge them and say, okay, now critically think, why did you feel the need to tell me that? Is it making you kinder? Does it make you a more loving person? And does it bring peace in your life, choosing that identity? And for me, choosing the identity of race didn't. And I'm just curious to see what you all's thoughts on it as well.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I've definitely had an increase of energy since removing myself from the construct of that box, that label. And I think that I've experienced that in so many ways of living. King, you were just saying to me, if I had a book cover, it would look like the human evolution map, where it's like all these different stages of my identity, because I continue to just bust myself out of a whole environment that has a specific way of being and an identity where all of a sudden it doesn't fit me anymore. And I leave pretty quickly. And every time I've done that, I have evolved quite rapidly. And now I'm becoming quite good at it. I don't want to continue to destruct as I leave, but I certainly want to continue to develop and change and expand. And I think that that is part of the process of letting go of what no longer fits and then being able to have your energy back, because all those things that don't fit are actually construct, their armor, their protection, their protection. And so as those protectors get released, now I have access to full potential. Now I have access to receiving because I'm not blocked. I'm not protecting.
Yeah, perfect. For me, I have an incredible thirst for knowledge and truth, and I'm able to retain a large portion of it because I don't really focus on the details. I want to get the concept. I want to see how it resonates with me and what my takeaway and lesson is, right? So recently I started studying Jesus, and it turns out, I believe now, that he goes by the name Yeshua, and he was actually Black to begin with. So who switched that? who put the white, blue-eyed guy and replaced it with the actual, what I believe was Yeshua, who was black.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, if you study the slaves, and this is the health lesson in this, but if you study slaves, they used to hum when they're in the fields picking the cotton. It wasn't hip hop. They were humming spiritual tunes, right? And so the power of humming, and I'm sure you guys went into the Temescal, and so I'll go in there occasionally and I'll just hum Om or Hu. And so what happens when you do that, you're creating an enormous amount of nitric oxide into the body, which is a very, very powerful healing molecule.
Yeah.
And so if you really start to study things and why things used to be, and where does all that information go? And why is it no longer taught to us? And who is that lack of knowledge serving? It's not serving us, because there's scientific proof all over that humming produces nitric oxide, and nitric oxide helps us to heal and become the best version of ourselves. So it's just interesting to me how history gets rewritten and changed. And even in my lifetime, I've seen history get rewritten, and I haven't studied this fact, so I might not be 100% accurate. But it's my understanding that even the books that these kids are studying in school, history is rewritten to create a different narrative and agenda for someone. And I know that's definitely true, because I've studied this a lot when it comes to medicine and big pharma. What we used to practice in medicine, the turn of the century, 1900 or so, got totally transformed in the 1920s, 1910s via donations to Harvard by certain individuals, and this whole American Medical Association and big pharma was created.
Yeah.
And when you study that, which I'm not going to go into right now, but everybody has an illness, study what these medications are doing to you, specifically primarily chemotherapy in the treatment of cancer, and you might have your eyes opened.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of points of view and ways for us to align with the correct frequency for each of us.
Yeah.
And I think with 8 billion people on the planet, there's a lot of individual truths that create a collective truth.
Yeah.
And at this point, we have quantum ability to be in the places that are resonant and healing for each of us.
Amen.
Absolutely. And to that point, as we get ready to wrap up today's show, I just want to share this too, that as I went through my journey on my wreckage, and I began to not get through the storm, again, the book that turned me helped me to center myself and get meaning again, because my identity was my purpose. And when I lost my identity, I lost my purpose. I was just looking around for what did I do now? And reading Creation Frequency and the way you outline how you go about doing some of the daily practices in your life, it just made sense. Right? I didn't fight it. Like before, and I read books. First time I read Anthony Robbins' 30-day cassette.
Right.
And I remember listening to that. And the first time I heard that, I'm not listening to that. I believe this, but I don't believe that. So I'm just in my mind mentally accepting what I want to accept, discarding what I don't want to accept. And I remember him saying this, that you will be changed at the end of these 30 days if you listen to these tapes. And most people interpret that to mean immediately change. Like like on day 30, now you're different. Right. No, what it means is that you're on a journey to start requesting more knowledge. Now you start to see information and knowledge and education differently than you did on day one when you started. And that's the change it made for me. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, the Creation Frequency really just helped. I was on that journey of being growth-minded, learning, reading all the books from Wayne Dyer to you name it. Stephen R. Covey is my favorite author as far as guidance and governing principles. And what I'm saying is, when I went to the Creation Frequency and I said, I got to meet this man, Mike Murphy. And here I am now, 3 years later, building on you with a podcast. Mm-hmm. See, that's the power of intention. That's the power I've been able to manifest. Now, again, you being open to receive that as well plays a role. But that's how powerful, if you start focusing on love energy and doing great things, this will lead to. Jess and I have been working together attempting to work together. And that's why it has to be a process. We say 6 months. We start off with all these enthusiastic beginner ideas of how we can work together, and everything was great. But where we are now is different than that.
We were really clear that we were both in a storm and that we were emerging. So we're like, oh, they're like, are we always emerging? So yeah, let's create from here.
And I think, and I just want to, and I want to give you all a chance to give your final points on this. My final point I want to leave on today's show is the construct convinces us that everything is fast, that you want a result instantly. And if you don't get a result instantly, then something's wrong. I've learned that in everything else in life, you look at universe, everything we value really takes time.
Mm-hmm.
If you were able to have a child in one day, how much would you value your children?
Exactly.
I just have another tomorrow, right? It's because you go through 9 months and you go through that pain of birthing that child and building that bond with that child. That's why it's there. Same thing with degrees. If you can get a PhD in the afternoon, what value would it have, right? But so that critical thinking is missing. And that's what I really wanted to say. It took 6 months for us to get here, to build, to learn, to grow, to take our time. And this is the beauty of what we manifest. That's my closing. Each of you all have your opportunity to share whatever closing thoughts you want to share with our listening audience.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I think that the creation frequency is ready to reemerge, resuscitate itself into the world, because you writing the creation frequency and sharing that manifestation work about how important it is that my life depends on it, that I'm going to manifest this now. And knowing the storm that you were in when you discovered that work, and knowing the storms we're all in as we're re-releasing that work, and that was the work that actually had me come stay at Mountains of Hope, knowing that we could embody that work, knowing we could play in that field, that we could have it work again and again and again through all of us, and even more so if we do it collectively. Yeah. So I'm just so excited that the creation frequency is manifesting, or is allowing us to manifest this through it.
Oh, perfect. Well, King, you made me laugh inside when you mentioned Tony Robbins' 30-day program. It's called Personal Power. And I think Tony Robbins has helped millions and millions of people throughout the world. And it was a big help in my life. And I listened to that program over and over and over. And I went to his 3-day or maybe 4-day firewalk workshop seminar. And I went to Date with Destiny a couple times. I was a platinum member. And I've done a lot of that work, and all that work is good, right? And then I keep evolving into a different kind of thing, right? But it's a great, powerful thing. Now, regarding, I call it the microwave society that we live in right now. And so it's nature, guys. If you go out and you plant a certain seed, say a rose or something like that, you're going to get it. So let's call that a small intention. And you water it, it gets sun and good soil, and it's going to manifest into a rose, that little seed, right? Same thing when we plant the seeds of intention, So I believe that those are electrical things that go into the field of infinite possibilities, and the heart is the magnet that draws them back if we're totally aligned and clear and all of that, right? And so, and if I have a big intention, and let's say, for example, I plant I think it's an acorn that becomes an oak tree, that takes a little longer, right? And so, and then there's things like bamboo that sit underground for a long time and then boom, just overnight shoot up. And so, and then you talk about things speeding up. So in the Bible, I believe it says that in the end times, things are going to really, really speed up. And so that's what I see. And so I think the magic of Mountains of Hope, and I did with my new best friend, ChatGPT, I did a recap of all the reviews online. And one of the things that really stood up is that people said, whoa, I slowed down. Whoa, I got in touch with nature. Whoa, I got in touch with myself. And I believe that's what happened. I was talking to my kids or my siblings the other night, and I said, when I was raising my kids, it seemed so much easier than watching my kids raise their kids. I said, as I think about it, so let's say we go on a family walk. Well, the telephone is hanging on the wall at home, okay? And we're just there and we're present, right? But nowadays, everybody's on these things. And I think that's a real danger when it comes to, we're social beings, and it's really affecting the social communication, which we all desperately need. And I think so many people are lonely. And, you know, even way back a long time ago, Thoreau said, you know, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Well, I think that's exponentially a lot more today. But there's so many distractions, you know, so many distractions to not live with that. And just, we're kidding ourselves to a certain, I'm guilty of this myself in spades. Everything I talk about is I've had these failings. You know, I think I'm one of the most flawed people here. But I keep trying, I keep growing, I keep trying to improve and become the best version of myself. And frankly, it's not easy. Why? Because life is difficult and relationships are difficult, and they're becoming more and more difficult because people are self-absorbed and they're very closed-minded to a certain degree. You mentioned earlier, King, there's not a lot of critical thinking going on, you know, so it's a difficult time to reach people, and we have to reach them in the heart.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Mike. Thank you, Jess, for you all both sharing up, being fully human, showing me what it looks like. You know, I can have ideas on paper, but like I said before, you all embody it. And that lets me know that this is the path to be on.
Yes.
And to Mike's point, you know, I remember, I'm forgetting the actual gentleman who said this. It was Swami Navigator. I'm pronouncing his last name incorrectly. He says, he says, once you label me, you negate me.
There you go.
And when I first read that, I said, that's powerful, but I didn't look at my identity as a label. Like I saw it as external to me, and I thought that was good advice for other people. And it's funny how you can read something like someone else can really learn from this, and your ego tells you that you've already mastered it. And that's what I'm learning now on this journey, is how much I don't know that I don't know. And what I need to learn to become a better person as a result of that growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yes.
Any last quotes you want to leave as we wrap up our show and conclude?
I think that was a perfect ending, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too.
With that being said, listen, audience, until next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's all look at ways to continue to work toward becoming more fully human. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Race is a lie, a ghost in the machine, a veil over the eye. Race is a lie, a script for the managed, a reason to die. It's the dementia, the spirit, it's the glitch in the code. It's the heavy, heavy baggage on a sovereign road. Dissolve the construct. Yeah, yeah. It started as a lie, a whisper in the dark, designed to keep the brothers from finding the spark. Father is a soul whose sovereign operating system was no longer whole. He didn't pull that trigger from his fully human place. The construct had the wheel, the construct ran the race. So stop fighting your father and dismantle the disease. If a lawyer wrote the code, the architect holds the